Hello, humans. This is yet another episode of your Power Report. Yo, I am mad respect to the people who stream every single day for multiple hours a day. Your boy's going through it. Episode 63 of your Power Report. Got a great show ahead for y'all. Bam will be joining in just a moment. And we are going to have a lot of things to straighten out. What amigos say? Ain't no straightening unless it get to straightening. See, you gotta do the straightening before you do the straightening. You know, that song is probably why amigos broke up. They got so tired of watching Offset explain that song, they're just like, fuck it. We're just gonna do Unconfused joints from now on. Yo. That's exactly what we're talking about. That's exactly what I was talking about. Bam. I was saying that we had a lot of things to straighten out on the show today. And as Offset has regrettably informed us, ain't no straightening unless it get to straightening. Yeah, let me fix your screen there a little bit. How you doing today? Good. Let's fix that. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me today. We've got some folks in chat as well. I think I see, Salty Gen X here. Thank you for being on. Old Lady Play left the box. See you as well. And then, oh yes, that's Bam. That's you. Oh no. Whoa, no. And Adara C, I remember you told me a name for you, and please remind me again. But yes, thank you for joining as well. Now we will be in, oh no, I do not want to close OBS. That would have been really funny. Let's go to auto risk. Perfect. Auto risk. That'll do. One thing that was really disappointing that came out this week was the Brittany Griner appeal got rejected. So yeah, not a lot of people are just like let go of the story, but I think as we talk about Russia and Ukraine and talk about peace deals or no peace deals or funding Ukraine or not funding Ukraine, which we'll be dipping to a little bit right now, not right now, but very shortly. I think that's one thing that is on the table here is that not just on the table in like a pure negotiation kind of way, but we can't forget that Russia very much is keeping Brittany Griner and potentially sending her to a labor camp for 9 years of a sentence as a political tactic. They're choosing to throw the book at her because they know that's leverage over the United States in some way. And that should be concerning, not just because she's an American, but especially because she is a black woman and America has got a lot of work to do in taking care of black women, people in general, people abroad, etc. So, what are some of your thoughts with that?
It's really unfortunate because, I mean, imagine somebody coming from Russia with a vape cartridge. You're not gonna get no 9 years, dude. Like, come on, dude. Like, it's just ridiculous. And obviously, Russia has different laws, but I don't think a regular Russian citizen going through the airport with a vape cartridge is gonna get a 9 year sentence. Like, come on now. Like, and it's really unfortunate because, like, obviously, we're talking about a human being, but her being locked up in Russia is not going to change America's policy towards Ukraine. Like, that's just not going to happen. So what they're doing there is terrible. Um, I don't know what the tankies think about it. I wonder, but I would imagine they just ignore it. But it's effectively torture. Like,
Yeah,
if,
it's
if they said 9 months, I'd be like, okay, yeah, whatever, 9 months, like sure. But 9 years,
9
jeez.
years. Or at least on Good Morning Bad News, I've covered a lot about the labor camps in Russia and how inhumane they are. So, yeah, I think in this conversation, we need to understand that there are a lot of different levers to pull and work with in this situation with Russia, and we need to be cognizant of all of them to make sure that we can, de-escalate the situation as much as possible. I'll tease more for later, but um, here's some live, local, and late breaking news. Oh no, Elon
Oh
Musk has
wow.
started firing top Twitter executives just tonight at time of recording because of yeah, he's apparently bought the company. This is the deadline for him buying the company. And let's see, it appears that CEO Parag Agrawal, Chief Financial Officer Ned Segal, and Vijaya God, who is the head of legal policy, trust, and safety, were all fired, according to the people. Sean Edgett, the company's general counsel, was also pushed out, and the top executives were hastily shuttled from the building. So this seems to be one of those like classic sort of Elon Musk style shakeups where he wants to assert his dominance in the company, probably put his own goons in there to do his bidding. And, on the one hand, this could be one of those things that just like ruins the social media app, and you see over a couple months that people just start migrating to other places. Maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's just disparate internet forums and discords. Maybe leftists take over 4chan. Like, I don't know what's happening today, but uh, this could also be a situation where Elon Musk, just the way particularly CEOs, is that he gets bored. He has the adults in the room do the actual work, and then he comes in to look important every once in a while, or when he's having a manic episode and decides to tweet a lot, because that's usually how those coincide.
It'll be really interesting. I mean, like you were saying, hopefully people just end up migrating off Twitter if he ruins it. Although I think Twitter is, I have strong thoughts about social media. So I'm down for him to ruin it and Twitter just dies.
Woo.
Personally, like I'm down for that personally. But
What did Twitter
uh,
do to you?
what it do to society? That's the thing. But like you said, I do think it's going to end up being like he gets bored. Probably some of these people will come back. He's not going to want to do any real work. And the way that I mean, this is not some small little play toy. This is a whole big global social media app. He's not going to want to do anything. The people that have been doing it the whole time are going to end up probably doing the same things they were doing before. I feel like the biggest thing is going to be who he allows to be on Twitter and like what he allows to stay on Twitter. Is it going to be that he lets Trump back or he allows for there to be obviously racism and stuff still you can still find it on Twitter, but it's against the policies or whatever. So you can report it and do your thing like that. Is he going to change those rules? I wonder, but I feel like if he does, then a lot of people are going to just be like, I'm done with Twitter.
Well, yeah, the concerning thing about this is that Elon Musk is using a conservative definition of freedom of speech, and he's very easily corralled by these conservative folks. And so by accepting their definitions, by accepting their framework, which, by the way, they've won that in the culture very well. In society, they're able to argue and say, oh, liberals are attacking free speech. And that's something that, moderates, to the extent that they exist in society, in American society still, will just, gobble up and believe. But, I think Elon's also addicted to Twitter. And I don't think that's a very bold statement for me to say. It's a very boring statement for me to say. And because of that, he is kind of incentivized to keep some of the chaos and some of the madness that makes Twitter what it is. Some of the value of it is that it is a very quick, democratized newswire. And also, I don't think Elon Musk may realize this, but eventually there are going to be some people on Twitter product who are like, yo, there are communities on Twitter. There are niche communities. There's Black Twitter. There's football Twitter, of both kinds of football Twitter. There's all different types of these niches that you also have to cater to. And most of them don't give a fuck about what Elon Musk has to say. So just because he posts a meme or literally brings a sink into the office, just to make like a bad joke, doesn't mean that that's going to work for the rest of the audience. And if it gets boring, and if it gets sad to be on that platform, people will go and just find something different and better.
For sure. Like Kanye tweeted the DEFCON 3 on the Jews, and his account was suspended or whatever, or timeout or whatever. Is the Elon Twitter going to allow that? I don't know, but I for sure don't think he's going to allow people that are on this live stream to talk about guillotines and his neck. I don't think that's going to happen anymore.
Well, it's the screenshots there, and this is about freedom of speech. And again, he asked figuratively, literally, or both. And what is Twitter without a little bit of dialogue? Because if that's not allowed, then let's go back and look at Elon Musk talking about, oh, of course he would do a coup in Bolivia to get some lithium for his electric cars, with that fugly ass panel gap in the back right there in that photo. And then we'll revisit that conversation of who gets to incite violence on the platform.
Hopefully, if people get off Twitter, they join me on Free Discussion Society, where we can have real conversations. And I'm getting flamed a bit in the Twitch chat. I do think there are some benefits to social media in general.
Let's go ahead and read the comments that you're talking about first. That'd be a great way to do the show, and then respond to it, please.
What Left of the Box said, I'm not being sarcastic. Twitter was the best thing to happen to me in the past 10 years. My life changed for the better when I joined. She also said, Twitter is how I got to meet and get to know Dan. Sorry for that. Old Lady Play says, Twitter is how we recently organized to fight off a takeover of our school board successfully. And yeah, I do think that, like I've had good times on Twitter and stuff too, but I mean, just my opinion, I think that Twitter's more bad than good.
That's not that's not an awful assumption. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I feel like, like I think Twitter's better than Instagram. I'll say that.
Well, damn. I mean, Instagram gets most of their content from Twitter.
I mean, okay.
And TikTok too.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on TikTok. I have nothing to offer that. But yeah, it'll just be interesting to see like if he turns Twitter into, what is that one, Gab or Parler or Truth Social? Like if he turns it to Rumble or whatever, we'll see.
Yeah,
but there might be something good in Twitter falling off under his watch. There might be something good about that, like for his own ego.
Well, he's had things fail for him before. He just spins it into a success and goes, hey, I launched a rocket instead. Look at me. So he'll distract over this. I want to dig in a little bit of this discourse as well. Also, If you're not following, make sure you are. We're almost at 100 followers, which is pretty rad. Um, so let's see. Old lady play, yeah. I actually find Twitter really useful as a community organizer. It'll be a shame if it turns into Truth Social. Old lady play, I have a question for you. We're spending. I don't want to spend so much time on the Elon Musk side of this. Yeah, I really don't. But I want to have you continue the discussion a little bit. So, old lady play, my question to you is: when you're organizing on Twitter, do you find that Twitter, as it is right now, is a conducive place for discourse for organizers? Because to me, my overall thesis, like the hill I will die on, is that Twitter is the worst way to communicate to people about politics, like the worst regular way. It incentivizes people to say like the wildest things, to have as little nuance as possible, to have to get the reaction, to get that retweet, or to get that like. And it's a game you can play. You can have better motives to use it than not, but mostly that incentive, even though it's a little bit less algorithmic and a little bit more democratic than other platforms, but that incentive is dangerous. And that incentive, when in the hands of people who have a lot of followers, who have loose morals when it comes to these kinds of things. I mean, again, we're talking about Ye. I don't really want to talk about him that much, but I think something has to be said that this is like a Gamergate moment for a lot of conservative black people online. They see that Ye's getting canceled as vindication for what he said. Like, see, he was right. And see, if he was saying this about black people, they wouldn't be doing the same thing. Even though you just play out that logic and go, yeah, white people wouldn't cancel a black person for what a black person's saying because that's black people's business, right? Like it's like it would be a little. I mean, like, yeah, there are obviously like lines you shouldn't cross. And by the way, Ye got a lot of disrespect, a lot of street cred for those comments as well, right? But I just don't find that comment to hold a lot of merit. But like, what I mean to say through all that is that when you have people like Ye use those platforms, it influences people. It gets to their head. And this is not the time and place where we want to be messing with anti-Semitism and extremist rhetoric when our politics are so divided, when we're this close to the brink of multiple theaters of war, and there's no real strong force in American society or in like societies overall that seem to want to make things better. They're all just looking for some other form of chaos. So yeah, overall, old lady play, my question for you there is like, do you think there's good discourse like possible on Twitter for organizers? Because most organizers just can't say any of that stuff seriously. And then yeah, left of the box. I really like. I like Twitter. I like how I've been able to appreciate and get to know people. But yeah, like I knew people on internet forums and MySpace, like whatever social media platform exists, as long as it's conducive to randomly meeting people as opposed to like friend requests and things like that, like this kind of thing will happen. But you know, when you create any sort of platform, you create rules of engagement, figuratively and literally. How you keep people engaged, but also how people communicate with each other. And Twitter is just like a weird set of dice. So,
and I also have a good friend that I talk to on the phone all the time. Met her on Twitter. She lives in Jersey, and yeah, like it is good for those things. But we do have an answer.
Yes. Only place say, I think Twitter as an experience is very much of one of curation. I would agree with that. If you're careful about whom you follow, you don't see most of the crap that gets put out. And since I'm using it to organize, I choose very carefully what I'm following. What I use it for instance, was to disseminate locally lists of suitable candidates in recent municipal elections. Yeah, I think that's really good. I think that's one of the things I really did like about Twitter is that it honestly forces you to curate for yourself, whereas the For You page on TikTok, for example, is like the most like extreme version of we're just going to serve you content constantly, and you don't have to put in that much effort, and we're just going to figure out what you like through that, because like, computer knows all. Yeah, as long as you're using it for all the right purposes. I just find like, maybe I'm just too cynical, but I see so many times when people try to use it for those good purposes and they get shot down by people who are just not serious. And then it makes those organizing efforts worse. But of course, you can definitely do it in a positive way. And on that, Letterhack says, I left Twitter because it was so negative. Then I went back intent on offering mostly contributions, and I got a lot more followers than before, mostly positive contributions. So it can be a good place. And yeah, like we're all like making our bones on, building platforms on Twitter and a lot of these spaces. So it involves a lot of engagement, involves a lot of seeing it. And so it's important to be balanced with that, to have, the good and the bad, etc. Plus, like, Twitter to me is also the app I have, as if this is an obituary, but it's the app I've enjoyed the most content wise, because Instagram's become very much about aesthetic. Facebook has absolutely no taste whatsoever. But because Twitter kind of forces you to write with prose, and now there's like a sort of like anti-prose where there's riddled with typos and it's written in a certain way, and like that's the humor and that's the joke. Like, you get people at their most raw and honest and funny, I think, on almost any other platform of its size. Everything else feels like a performance or a curation in Twitter, because Twitter is certainly that too. But like, we criticize people on Twitter and we could post these tweets because when Glenn Greenwald's saying something stupid, he's saying it with his chest online. And so we can know that he's confidently putting those dumb opinions out there online. And we can see other people showing their asses and showing the same thing. And in a grand scheme of things, like Elon Musk seeing this as a philosophical, how would a global town square work and work well? Like that's a cool thing about Twitter. But yeah, when you get to the actual brass tacks about it, like, none of these people actually want to run the bitch. None of these Jack Dorsey, Parag Agrawal, like Elon Musk now, like, all these people are going to, and there's going to be an article coming out tomorrow by Nilay Patel, The Verge. He's really smart at these things. It's called Welcome to Hell, Elon Musk. Because he's gonna, like with everything, he's gonna, like, sing and dance and be all cutesy, and then he's gonna have a meeting where he realizes what he's actually done. What he's actually done, he's sunk a significant amount of his wealth into a fire he cannot put out. Because all he knows how to do is start fires. And that's, I mean, he could do that. It's not gonna go well for him, and it's really not gonna go well for society.
No, 100%. It like the global town hall, like that's a great idea, but it is impossible. Like, and also Twitter is X-rated, like like there's a lot of stuff that comes with Twitter. Also, I
Really?
agree, Twitter has been my favorite social media app for sure, because there is something about, you are reading what somebody is saying, as opposed to Instagram, which is like pictures and you're just like, geez, dude, this is like really dumb. But yeah, it's gonna be tough for him for sure. And I'm just looking at it like, wow, like you put this much money into it, you're probably gonna want to sell it like next year. And who's gonna come with another, however much it can sell for again? Like, who's coming with that money other than a Saudi dude?
Oh, it's gonna be liquidation world is the thing. Is that it's gonna be sold for at a loss. You're gonna be doing it in a recession. They're already going to be firing like 75% of the workers, so it's going to be a security nightmare on the website. It's going to be, Elon Musk is like, we want to get rid of bots. Firing 75% of the people, those were some of the bot people. Those are some of the people figuring out your little bot problem, buddy. And those are some of the people with the institutional knowledge for that. So it's only going to get worse. And that's also a thing that kills platforms, is just when they become too unusable to spam. I mean, with that point at Instagram, honestly, it's just too much spam.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, and even with like, yeah, get rid of the bots. Like half your followers are going to be gone too. Like Elon, I don't know how many followers he has, but for sure half of them
like
are going to be
110
gone.
million last I checked.
On Twitter?
On Twitter.com.
I don't believe that. No way, dude.
Well,
there's no way he has
look that up, Jamie.
100.
Bango.
There's no way.
110.3 on the dot.
That's crazy. Yeah. So for get rid of the bots, he's gonna go down to like 7 million.
Yeah.
I don't know how this dude is famous. This really blows my mind. People are
People are
crazy.
cultists.
Um,
Um,
like insane.
let's, as I get to the new recording, move on. Want to talk about Ukraine? Now you're all energized up, loose and goose. The juice is loosed. Okay, so the way I wanted to do this, there are a lot of different ways, and thankfully I spared you of the Kyle Kalinske route. So we're just going to go in through the nice and honorable way. Politico.com. So, House progressives retracted a statement that they released earlier this week that was, just hit with so much firestorm from all sides of the Democratic Party, honestly. And the statement was an incredibly moderate comment on the state of the war in Ukraine, at least in my opinion. I'll read some parts of it, because, well, actually, I need to find I want to explain how the backpedaling went, because that is kind of the more annoying thing. Because Pramila Jayapal said that it was a letter that was originally dated for August or something, but that staffers leaked it early, which is one of the, putting yourself into a pretzel, honestly, folding yourself to like make that logic work. Like, the staffers released this letter that 30 people had signed on to already. So apparently saying the original release date for the letter was August 1st, adding that it was never made clear why there was a delay. Its text was circulating on the Hill during August's weeks-long recess. And then Ilhan Omar apparently said, once you sign on to a letter, it's up to the original drafters, and unfortunately not all of them will keep updated. So it really caused a flashpoint on the left. It had 30 signees. There was a lot of people in the House Progressive Caucus. And in my opinion, the letter itself was really tame. It was like not even. There's a lot of people who think there's just like two opinions on this. And it's either we fund Ukraine or we let them just leave them out. Yeah. Yeah, just leave them out to pasture. And this letter was essentially saying we support Ukraine and their sovereignty. We don't want Russia to use nuclear weapons or to cause any more damage. And therefore, we're providing Ukraine with a lot of weapons and a lot of money and a lot of resources. And we don't want to stop doing that. We don't even want to put that in jeopardy. But we feel that there's an easy way for this to just become a thing we endlessly do and endlessly fund, and a quite expensive thing at that. And there are people within the administration who are just turning this into administrative foreign policy projects. How do we stop against that? How do we prevent that from happening? How do we at least say, okay, we have an intent of figuring out how do we wind down the violence? And yeah, it was just hit with a lot of hate. I was watching a lot of different shows, and there are various different opinions on the left throughout this, and I think that's really good, and it's a very flourishing thing. But of course, as usual, there's the tanky opinion, which is absolutely insane, which I'm not even going to entertain here. And then there's also an alarmingly common thing, and I'll save my hot take for this a little bit later, where people are saying, well, yeah, it's just like any question about funding Ukraine indefinitely is met with not just skepticism, but it's like, oh, you must want them all to die. And so I think there obviously has to be a middle ground. But you can also disagree with me, Bam. What do you think?
No, I agree with you 100%. I don't think it was wrong for them to, at least they're just encouraging diplomacy. They're encouraging the Biden administration to do everything they can diplomatically. And That's not a bad thing. I mean, you have to assume, like, I mean, it's not bad to assume that maybe they're not, because we got a lot of neocons out there. Um, so no, I didn't think that the letter was bad in itself. I can understand why they retracted it, like whatever. I mean, especially because it's old, like whatever, like like you don't feel the same way anymore. But it also doesn't surprise me people in whether it be like MSNBC or CNN, like they always bring on like ex generals and uh, a lot of neocon types. So I can see them getting a lot of backlash from those types for sure. But I don't think that it's like you said. The letter was not saying like you need to stop, like don't give them another dime. It wasn't saying that. It's just like an encouragement, like, hey, you sure you're doing everything you can? And it's not like we got a response from the Biden administration to it. I don't think, because they could just say, "Yeah, we are. Thanks, appreciate it," and it's over. Like. But I didn't think that was that crazy either.
Yeah, Old Lady Play says, I don't think there was anything wrong with the statement except that it existed, which seems like you think there's a lot wrong with it. But I mean, I don't oppose the ideas contained in it, but the fact is that it's not up to the U.S. what Ukraine will accept for a peace settlement. It's not up to the U.S. to decide that Ukraine must be forced to the table with the liars in Russia. And so, like, that's kind of like a lot of the criticism to a lot of this. And I want to be careful to not frame it in such a way where America is saying Ukraine must do this, or, we're assuming that Russia is acting in good faith and can be brought to the negotiating table. Or at least like that's an immediate thing. Sure, but like it's what I haven't seen completely answered in this is that, and I kind of remember saying this early on in the war, in the invasion ban, and I was like talking to you through this and you disagreed with me because I was like, listen, Zelensky is out there like trying to, I think I was saying Zelensky is warmongering, and like you're saying, well, yeah, his country's getting invaded. And I'm saying, well, yeah, but he is, and like, yeah, that's gonna be his job, that's gonna be like the place he has. But at the end of the day, like, kind of to what the comment is saying, Ukraine's interests are different from the United States' interests. So, like, Ukraine is going to want to have every ability in the world to fight for their country and get, retain their territory. And, in a lot of cases, again, some people are saying we just want to retain our territory. Some people are saying we want Crimea back. Like, the end game on the other side is not, or any other side, because there's more two sides of this, isn't clear to me. So what I'm looking for is like some like, how do we get towards the, basically how do we get towards this not being a forever war? Because the other side is not talking about, okay, understanding what this is looking like, Putin is crazy, etc. Like what does an end look like? What would Ukraine ending be looking like?
So that's kind of the thing, and I'm not addressing this to you necessarily. Like I feel like there is this, for some reason, there's this narrative that like leaves out Russia because the war ends when Putin wants it to end. Like it's on him. Like there, and also going to like why this is happening. I think what Putin said initially, like we have to, I think a lot of us had an idea that like Putin was a rational person to some extent. Like there's an idea that he's like practical and like a realist and a pragmatic type of person, because we don't know a whole lot about what's going on over there. But with this situation, we see that he's not. And his intentions for this war were, his words were to demilitarize and denazify and to like stop the aggression against the Russian people that are in Ukraine. And also, he said Ukraine is not a real country. And the idea was that we're going to go there and they're going to throw flowers at us and it's going to take 3 days and it's going to be over. Sound familiar? Um, obviously that's not the case. Like it makes sense for Ukraine. Most countries have a military. It makes sense for Ukraine to have a military. He's implying that it's a Nazi-run country. That's ridiculous. But that's what he said. I don't know when that objective is supposed to be met. I have no idea. I do feel like I do like I don't know like which regions or cities that Russia has like occupied at this point. I do know that Ukraine has taken some back or whatever. I do feel like there is a certain amount of land that Ukraine would give up if Russia stopped the war. Like if Russia stopped bombing Kiev and like took their troops back. I don't think that Ukraine is going to be like, no, like no, we got to keep fighting. I don't think that. I don't know, but I don't think so. But we have a situation where Putin is bombing their capital city with drones and shooting missiles at bridges and walking bridges and things like that. There hasn't been one missile shot into Russia. There hasn't been one thing that's happened to Russian people. So the way that I see this war is the same exact way I saw the Iraq war. The aggressors are the bad ones. They got to leave. And Putin is Saddam. Or I mean, I'm sorry, Putin is George Bush.
So like
but it's even worse. It's even worse because Ukraine is a democracy. A flawed democracy, yes, but it's a democracy. So that's even worse. Like we're not talking about a country where everybody hates the leader. Like there's countries like everybody hated Saddam in Iraq. This is a leader that was elected by 70% of the population or something like that. So it's not the same thing. I think Putin has an issue with democracy.
Yeah. Oh no, and Putin is very deliberate with what he's doing. A lot of what he's been talking about lately is this appeal to, the West isn't all that bad. There's a good Christian conservative West, and then there's the elites. And you know what that kind of talk goes
he's
to.
He's talking about transgender children the other day. He's literally doing like Fox News talking points. Like this, like
he's doing Matt Walsh shit at this point in Russian translations.
Literally. Yeah, like literally. Like this is like I don't even know how anybody has like any affinity towards him. Like he is the great Satan too now. And Russia isn't like just like chilling. Like Russia sends a lot of troops in around the world. Russia meddles militarily in other countries. Russia was meddling militarily in Libya. They just recently in Burkina Faso, there was a lot of Russian mercenaries. In Central African Republic, there were a lot of Russian mercenaries. Russia's not out here just chill. Obviously, we know about the situation in Syria. Russia's not just like saying like, it might look to some people like, oh, NATO surrounded them. And, when Putin declared his special operation against Ukraine, not once did he say, I'm doing this because NATO surrounded me. He did not say that. So for all the tankies that are trying to say that that's the reason, he didn't say that himself. For the conspiracy theorists who forgot that they said that there was these bioterror labs in Ukraine, I think they forgot that. But he didn't say that. He said we're going to demilitarize and denazify, and we're going to save the Russian-speaking people who literally you had to kidnap them to take them to Russia, and the rest of them left. Like they don't want to be Russia, dude.
Exactly.
They could have left. They could have left a long time ago. They could go right there. If they wanted to be part of Russia, they could just go over there.
Or any of the Russia cinematic universe, because a lot of the countries around there are still, like what they're saying. They have ties to Russian culture and Russian identity. And like Russians have ties to, Ukrainians and Georgians and all these other different like groups that are around there. Armenians, like there's all of that there too. But, it's not all like a perfect brush as well. But like these...
Don't say they all look the same.
I'm saying that there's, Bam. God damn it. But yeah, Old Lady Play says, I think if the letter had been addressed to Ukraine or Zelensky, I'd have respected it more. As I said, I agree with the idea. I have something saying to Biden that Ukraine should come to the table as our place. I disagree there. Like, I don't think it's the place of the House of Representatives to write a letter expecting anyone to do anything except what's within their government. I think it's like, and I think that something like this happened. Like Benjamin Netanyahu gave a speech or something in Congress or something like that. Like there was like a direct endorsement there, and we're all like, "Wait, who's our president? Like, what's going on right now?" Like, we actually had this. We had this debate during the Trump administration. Like, we should be acting as our own country. Now, I don't like the idea that we're Team America, world police, and all this situation. I kind of maybe my issue is that if the strategy overall is to go, hey, look, we can, like every other big business in this economy, skim off of the situation and say the inevitable situation is to just sort of like bleed Russia out dry, because as long as they try to invade Ukraine, they'll be depleting their military, and the rest of the world will be sending artillery to them, which means more funds for Raytheon and Northrop Grumman, more funds for more defense contractors around the world, and more things for them to do while, yeah, supporting this chaotic mess. And maybe that's just like what it'll be benefiting. Maybe that's what it'll just made be beneficial for. And like they think that, okay, eventually Putin will have to come to the table because we will have fired every piece of metal we possibly have in the United States at this man.
So I think that I can understand having that idea. Like it looks like that's what America would do. You know, that's something America would do for sure. Like if you got the neocon eye glasses on, like yeah, you know, they could even stoke the war to try to bleed Russia dry. But I don't think that's the case because Russia's military is huge. Like it's not going to be getting bled dry. Like they're not going to run out of ammunition, you know, like and Putin doesn't care. Like they're elite politicians, and Putin they don't care if the Russian people suffer because of this war, which I also wish that people talked about that more too. Like the Russian people are suffering too. Like, yeah, America and the European Union and all these places put sanctions on those, like on Russia. That sucks that Putin is putting his people through that too over a bullshit war. Just like how we suffered here in America when George Bush invaded Iraq.
And I think people like, in Russia are beginning to see that as well, especially with this draft where people are just like being pulled out of prisons and coffee shops and all these other different situations to go to this war that months ago they were like, oh shit, we're going to have to call back 50-year-olds who had retired from the force because we have nobody with any competence who knows how to like drive these ships to head into the, as I've been calling it, the Starship Troopersification of the Russian army.
Literally. And Russia's military has always been known for like lack of professionalism, not getting fed. Like I remember reading about the war in Chechnya, and Russian soldiers are begging in the streets of Grozny. Literally, like they're not getting food. So it's not surprising to me that that's what's happening with the Russian military, because it's bad in that sense. But they do have a lot of artillery and equipment, and they have technology to bombard cities. Like, you know, anybody can do that. You don't need soldiers on the ground to do that. But it's really a shame that anyone could see, you know, the capital city of Ukraine getting bombarded and civilians being killed in apartment buildings and say like Ukraine's supposed to give up.
Yeah, and,
like,
and
no,
I absolutely am not
like
saying that. I'm absolutely not saying that.
You know, and I know you're not. I'm not
and go ahead.
Like for me, it's like there is agency on Vladimir Putin. That's where the most agency lies. Like the United States did not start this war. Like the fact that they were having like invasions right now is crazy. It doesn't make any sense. We just coming out of the pandemic. No country can afford, like you can't afford to be invading another country. When everybody talks about countries go to like some autocratic person or whatever, some autocratic leader, whatever, will go to war to like distract this population. Like this is the obvious one. Russia's not doing great, so you can't afford to be going to war. That wars cost a lot of money, and I don't want it to be a forever war either. Like, obviously, I hate war, but the onus is on Putin. It's up to him to leave, and if he doesn't, the Ukrainians are going to keep fighting to the last man. You know, because they're not doing that bad. So it's like, we're not doing that bad.
Yeah. Um.
It's unfortunate though. I'll say this last thing. It is unfortunate though that those companies like Northrop Grumman and Raytheon and all these defense companies and GE, whoever, do cash out on situations like that, like this. That's unfortunate. But if somebody's supposed to throw in their conspiracy hat, you should just assume that Putin has some stock in them somehow. like if you want to throw in the conspiracy hat, do it like that.
I think you might have just started something that might be fun on the show. That's a conspiracy that Putin and Nancy Pelosi have a special phone line where they're doing advanced trades.
I mean, that would make more sense. Like, damn, I can make a whole lot of money. Let me go start this war real fast.
I mean, that's the way leaders think.
I mean, exactly.
So yeah,
and Putin.
I would agree with you, Bam, and I agree with what old lady play here says in the end that Russia, Putin, you have the most agency here, given that politics is, especially world politics, is not okay throwing your hands up and waiting for the madman to sort of just continue and do his thing. Like it, I'm trying to think and push people to imagine, especially who are in that spot, because to think of, okay, what would this end look like? Not again. So, and when you get to that point, you go, I don't want to force Ukraine to end. Okay, let's have another thought after that. And this is not meant to be attacked, but I'm like, let's continue thinking this out, because what I think the instinct that a lot of people, especially people who are, admittedly young, but like veterans to a lot of stuff on the left, is how quickly people acquiesced to the idea of the Iraq war in the United States, and how easy it is to get people on the so-called, political left of the country to turn into war hawks and to kind of like get ready to go for everything. And like listen, this is not like, again, just like you said in the beginning, Bam, because I already see you getting ready to go, all right? It's not easy to make this like an apples to oranges like Iraq comparison, right? Like obviously it's a different situation. But just like Republicans are ready to make Trump like supreme leader for 20 years, there are a lot of leftists who would be super down for an imperial project, all right? Like I see it within within these groups. And so this is a moment to say, again, like one of the reasons I'm part of the left is because of like working to stop conflicts. And, conflicts don't necessarily stop ever because the bad guy decides to let up. All right. And so, like before you jump into there, it's like where I see as an actual tangible, like, sort of where you move towards that is, there were talk about economic sanctions. You're getting into the winter now where energy is going to be very strained. There's a lot of more cutting off that could be done when it comes to Russia's energy. And like, yeah, it would be tough on Europe as well. But if you want to talk about ending this war a lot more quickly, draining Russia of its resources and actually making them come to the negotiating table, we need to start talking about those things instead of saying, well, I don't know, we'll have some bloodshed over here and some stalemates over there, and then every month Ukraine will come asking for another $20 and it'll go down to the store. And like it's just like no, this can very easily, like, jokes aside, this can very easily get endless. And we didn't start this war. We may not have the ability to end this war, but ultimately we're paying for it. And it's not like this whole like infinite money thing. Like this is money that, of course, the American Congress is not going to use for homelessness or anything useful. But this is money that could be used for many things. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. The only thing I was slightly disagreeing with you is like the political left becoming war hawks. Like I'll say like the Democratic Party people did, but like in the lead up to the Iraq War, there was the biggest protest movement in America in history. Like I think the people that were on the left were like on the ground protesting against the war. Um, so that was like the face I made
Yeah,
for
but
that.
when you look at the polls ultimately of like regular people who, and again, the general American public, you'd be able to not say that, like the general American public, like 7 out of 10 people were chill with the Iraq War, and it's not like, and yeah, and
Yeah.
7 out of 10 people weren't necessarily like Republicans then. Left right was still 50-50. So again,
No.
just by math there, it's raw and it's like a little bit like crude, but that's enough overlap to say that there are people on the left who can get riled up enough. Or again, I'm using left in a more broader sense than I usually do here. I mean, like in a literally
Okay. Okay.
cut
Okay.
the country in
Okay.
half ideology, like blue red. So like, I
Gotcha.
forgive
Gotcha.
me for that point
Yeah.
there, but
But you know why? Like it's not hard to understand why those people could get riled up for that war. 9/11 had just happened. People are getting convinced that Saddam has something to do with it. He's an old enemy,
and in 2020,
and those
and
people
guess
are
what? And in
brown.
2020, in 2022, people are cooped up and are always on their phones. They're seeing all the stuff about Ukraine and getting into a fit about that because the people who are victims are white. And Putin already has this bad taste in the mouth of a lot of liberals who were fed Russiagate nonsense for the past 4 years under Trump. Okay, like let's
Yeah.
keep riffing here, dude. Like there are,
Yeah.
I think there are
Yeah.
not the same, but there is a foundation where you can very easily start
Yeah.
to mix the Kool-Aid in a really bad way on this.
I'll say this: in no way would I support American troops on the ground there. Like, I don't support that by any means. Um, I wouldn't even, although we might have troops from Belarus and stuff there soon. Who knows? Um, but I wouldn't support like some kind of coalition to go fight there. And I don't even think it needs that. But yeah, I
Really
don't know.
fast
Like
old
as
lady
far
play,
as
like really fast old lady play. You're saying this will no longer be an endless war. If I come on, I'll explain that, but it won't be. Listen, I really appreciate like the ability to come on, but also like I think you have the ability to truncate at least some of it and talk about it like in the chat. Like you're here. I'd love to have it here. Like and
get
yeah,
it cracking in the chat.
I'll see if I can have you later on to go through the details more. But also like we'd have to have a discussion about you. I'm just a person with an opinion. You're just a person with an opinion. Like there's credibility questions to also have here when I'm talking about platforming a person. That's no offense to you. It's just like vetting needs to be done. I can't make guarantees there, but like again, like I based on I think I've already made myself clear. I don't like I was
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Any more caveats would just be ridiculous.
Well, I was going to go back to what you said. What you said as far as like what other tactics can be used to kind of coerce Russia into stopping this war. Unfortunately, we have an anti-democracy like coalition in the world that does not give a damn what Russia's doing in Ukraine. Although we did hear some comments from India and from China, like India is still going to buy Russian oil and gas, and so is China, and other countries like are going to do that as well. Um, because yeah, like there are countries that even if they don't necessarily support what Russia's doing in Ukraine, like in the UN, you get a lot of abstentions. Like people are just like, oh, whatever. And a lot of African countries are just kind of like indifferent. But yeah, that could happen. It'll suck for the Russian people even more. Like it would it would work more if Putin cared what happened to the Russian people. Like if he
Well,
actually
I guess what
cared,
I'm more
then it
getting
would
at
work
is
more.
Putin cares about his power. We all know that, and he's not necessarily a rational actor. I'm not saying okay, we have to find like some political assassination job because I don't think creating a power vacuum is a
No, no,
better
no, of course
situation to
not.
solve this either. But you
I,
no,
I
it's
think
just,
yeah. Sorry.
like ultimately Putin's power, all those resources, there are things that are there. There are things they exist, and everyone has leverage to work with. Hell, like if it's come to the negotiating table, let's talk about trading prisoners or whatever. Let's get Brittany Griner. Let's do this. Let's maybe if we get that deal done, okay, look, we did something diplomacy rise. We have a foundation. Let's continue the process. Like it's I guess right now my frustration that I can end it is even the people who say like there's a plan, there's an end game or whatever, that needs to be communicated pretty well and cohesively. And we need to be trying a lot of different angles, which is why I say with everything, a lot of different angles at resolving this conflict. Because I'm very well aware, I was covering this from the beginning, that like Russia does not necessarily want to go to the negotiating table, and other countries such as Turkey were going to try to block it anyways in the United Nations. So I understand that difficulty there, but there are also realities that this is, yeah.
I think the power to end the war is in the hands of Russian people. The longer this war goes, the more drafting there's done, the more unpopular it's going to get in Russia, and the more that Russian soldiers and conscripts are not going to be able to get their supplies and be able to keep themselves warm in Ukraine and eat food. You will start to see people like soldiers be like, I'm not doing this anymore. If you could, it wouldn't surprise me to see. I don't want to call it a mutiny, but like Russian soldiers just being like, I'm not doing it. And I think if Putin and them generals start to see like we can't really get the morale above a 2, they'll understand like we got to end this. Hopefully that doesn't mean the same thing that happened in Chechnya, because that's the same thing that happened in Chechnya. But then when Putin actually got into power, he reignited the situation by just bombing Grozny, just like hitting it with missiles. So hopefully it doesn't happen that way. But the way that I see it ending is Russian soldiers saying, we can't do this anymore. Russian people still protesting and leaving the country by the thousands, like they already are. Russian men mostly, so they don't have to go fight. The more that happens, Putin's like, look, okay, it's over.
Yeah,
we won. Build a statue. Build a statue.
Mission accomplished in Russian. Yeah. The last thing, just what old lady play says, and thank you for typing this part out, because it's also very clarifying. Why it won't be endless. The Ukrainians are now have a fielding force that's battle hardened. They're fighting for their homes, their countrymen. Russians have crap equipment, untrained troops who don't want to be there. It's a recipe for Russian disaster, and they don't have the means to fix it while the war is going on. Yeah, that's absolutely true. That that's like a thing you've seen from the beginning. That's a thing we've also acknowledged with BAM also saying that the Russian military has had issues gathering equipment, having the resources to do just any of the military exercises that Putin puts them on, and yet Putin keeps doing this. So morale's going to hit an all-time low. It's sort of the elephant in the room is, what does Putin do in a desperate situation like that? Like, yeah, exactly. It's like,
no.
I know I said I was ending the conversation there, but the thing Putin does that's annoying is that projection thing where he accuses other countries of doing or other people of doing the thing that's on his mind. So when he's saying Ukraine's got a dirty bomb, I'm thinking Russia's thinking about a dirty bomb. Like when Russia's talking about, hey, we might have to use nukes, I'm thinking, okay, they probably maybe or they may not, but they may create like some situation where they have to they can make the excuse to say, well, looks like this is justified, and they do some targeted or small nuclear thing. Like we've seen, because Russia is the aggressor, that they're the ones who are most likely to up the ante, and I worry about that. I don't think the solution is Ukraine like coming to the negotiating table, but I do think the solution is America and the other countries involved doing something differently than they are right now.
Well, I think any country that's been invaded is always open to negotiation. Like, I don't think Ukraine is like like they're open to negotiation when it's okay. We're stopping the fighting. Let's negotiate. Like that's what happens with Hamas, like in Palestine and Israel all the time. They stop fighting, they negotiate, it stops for a while, they start fighting again, whatever. But you, I don't think Zelensky is opposed to negotiating, but you can't negotiate while
Yeah.
they're still killing people. You
Yeah.
know,
So I think that's good. We've gone through all of that.
we had a question about how credible does everyone think the reports of Putin's
Yeah,
shaky health are, like out of
there
risk.
I agree with old lady play. I think there's just like really not certain enough to rely on. There's rumors about Putin's health that kind of fly around every couple of years, and I think just like every other person of age who is like of political stature, like yeah, they have health issues. They want the public to know as little about them as possible, because they don't want any concerns to be on their power. I definitely have seen like footage of him. Definitely, like it doesn't look like you could doctor it. Like he's looking shaky. He's looking a little bit weaker. That can be for any number of reasons. I don't think that necessarily means that he's about to do some kind of, just Putin just all of a sudden collapses and then, oh, ding dong, the war's over. Like, it's not going to be like any kind of kaput thing, although that'd be an epic thing to be wrong on.
Glenn Greenwald will blame Obama for that.
I don't even want to go into any racial undertones that might have.
Oh no.
So, how about we move on to Texas has a law where you can carry a gun without a permit. And it's going great, as I'm sure you can imagine. So let's read some of this article from the New York Times. That's New York with an N. Texas goes permitless on guns, and police face an armed public. This is a story. Tony Earls hung his head before a row of television cameras, staring down as his life was upended. Days before, Earls had pulled out a handgun and opened fire, hoping to strike a man who had just robbed him and his wife at an ATM in Houston. Instead, he struck Arlene Alvarez, a 9-year-old girl, in a passing pickup truck, killing her. Is Mr. Earls licensed to carry? A reporter asked during the February news conference, in which his lawyer spoke for him. He didn't need one, the lawyer replied. Everything about that situation we believe and contend was justified under Texas law. A grand jury later agreed, declining to indict Mr. Earls for any crime. So yeah, I'll read the last sentence here before we jump in. The shooting was part of what many sheriffs, police leaders, district attorneys in urban areas of Texas say has been an increase in people carrying weapons and in spur-of-the-moment gunfire in the years since the state began allowing most adults 21 or over to carry a handgun without a license. So in a lot of states, again, like there is a lot of states, even the really conservative states, they don't have free-for-all gun laws. It's you need a permit, you need some type of training, you need to prove you're semi-competent, and you register the gun. Now, of course, people get around it, criminals get around it, but regular conservatives who, dream of shooting up the Capitol also get around it too, with ghost guns and by advocating for laws like this, where now you don't even need a permit. You don't even need a concealed carry license to have a gun, which means you don't know gun safety, which means you're going to pull out your weapon and aim in a particularly bad situation like this. So, bam. When are we moving to Texas?
I mean, it's just crazy. Apparently, I mean, I wonder what it's going to do for police shootings, like with police shooting people. Apparently, the law came into effect last year, and I saw something that said that there's been like a 62% increase in mass shootings in Texas since then. Yeah, I just wonder like what that's going to mean for police, because now they like really have the excuse. I thought he had a gun. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, he probably did. um, But yeah, I mean, laws like that just make society more dangerous. People are dangerous when they're anxious and paranoid. Like, it's not going to stop people from getting into arguments and things, and like, somebody accidentally, you know, uh, bumping into someone and somebody saying, "Hey, watch your step." But when you have these free for all gun laws like that, yeah, watch your step becomes like you pull your gun out. And people, the way people are, like when people pull guns out, they use them generally. And especially if you pull a gun out, then the other person is going to pull a gun out. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
going to use
because
it.
you're
Somebody's going to use
both
it.
gonna feel threatened for your life, and then it's first finger wins.
Basically, yeah. Um,
First
and the
finger
and
lives. Sorry.
you know, there you go, there you go. Um, and the thing is too, like the way like guns aren't like how they used to be, and like bullets, like we remember like Tupac got shot 5 times, and like 50 Cent got shot 9 times allegedly, and they lived and they're fine. Like now the bullets are different, like they got big old bullets. These people are carrying big
Extendo clip
handguns,
handguns. The handguns are supposed to only
and
have like a certain number of shots. Now have
yeah,
as many shots and shoot as quickly as a semi-automatic.
30. They're putting switches on guns, which is a big crime. So not everybody's going to be doing that, but yeah, like if you see a video of somebody shooting a handgun with a switch on it, it's like a machine gun. And yeah, you got an extended clip with like 30 bullets in there. I don't know. Like, I don't know what these people, Joe Rogan and everybody think. Like, I was going to move to Texas and be so much better. Like, nah, dude. Like, I feel like a lot of males, especially, get like they have this idea like I'm going to get aggressive out in the public with somebody that like does me
Yeah,
wrong.
do some
And it's like, but you're
push-ups.
gonna
All right?
die, dude. Like like you're gonna literally get paralyzed over being like, hey, watch out, like on the road. Like somebody's gonna start shooting
uh,
at you.
uh,
I
Segue.
don't
In
know.
the
This
border
is
town of Eagle
it's
Pass,
madness.
drunken arguments have flared into shootings. In El Paso, revelers who legally bring
There you
guns to
go.
parties have opened fire to stop fights. In and around Houston, prosecutors have received a
There
growing
you
stream
go.
of cases involving guns brandished or fired over parking spots, bad driving, loud music, and love triangles.
Oh, well, the love triangle thing is love triangles is tale old as time. and and the
No,
thing is, you already
Boomhauer!
see things like this. Like you already like you already see things like this, but when it's like everybody can just show up and like yeah, just you can go get a gun. Like, are you telling me that Dan, you and I can just go to Texas and get an Airbnb and just go to the gun store and just like pick one out and just go
Yeah,
home
it's the
like it's
Airbnb,
nothing? Like,
brother.
is that the
That's all. That's
case?
all it is to it. No, I mean, like, I am. I am one of those leftists who is all for an informed gun ownership public, an informed gun owning left, especially in this American political environment. And a lot of people would see that as okay, well, you see a world where leftists and rightists have to like fight with guns in a way like Bam is describing, where they elect themselves to be judge, jury, and executioner in the street. Well, one, I would point back to our conversation earlier where we are talking about who's the aggressor and who has to fight back. Number two, I would say that when we actually do have the situation here, like in Houston, it's not. It's obviously terrible because we hate cops. We hate the idea that they have impunity and they have the ability to walk out in public with very little accountability. You would hate that a lot more if your neighbor had that. Like you would hate that a lot more if the guy who owns the corner store who like gives you a funny look also had that ability as well. Because you're gonna start needing GoPros on the Glock to help be proven to make sure that you had to use it on self-defense. Because we all know, like, once the gun goes off and one of the witnesses ain't able to give their testimony, uh, you just have like an entire mess.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm someone, I hate guns. Like I wish we had a basically a gunless society. I wish we had
What?
Mexico's gun laws. Um, I wish our police didn't carry guns like in the UK. Um, yeah, I hate them a lot, and I think we have too many. And I think we talked about this not that long ago on here. It's just like when people have guns, they use them. Like like if somebody like if you're in your house, and obviously not everybody, but like if you're in your house and you're sleeping, you like hear some noise, like you're gonna go for your gun, like because it's there. It's like that's the thing I gotta use, and it's dangerous. And people, how many people die from accidents every year? And I guess I mean, and I remember not that long ago they're saying like more children die from gunfire now than car accidents for the first time in forever. Um, I don't know. It's just unfortunate that we have politicians that want this to be Mad Max, and people fall
Yeah,
for
I
it.
mean, there's also the
I don't know.
profit
I
motive,
mean,
though, right? Because like you have these private companies who are like, okay, well, we have a political party that is scaring the shit out of people, telling them that there's crime rising and there's police being defunded and no one's coming to save you, so you have to take matters into your own hands to buy a gun. That's built-in marketing. So they have to spend less money. All they need to do is just
oh yeah,
make the
for sure.
product, build the product, and ship it. Atarisk says 100% bam. That's why I don't own a gun yet. But the way the country is going, the clock is probably ticking. And Old Lady Play says too often we're left with the complexion making the connection. I think is a good line.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. Like, I've been around guns. I've used to go to some very ratchet parties and people would shoot. I've been around it. I'll say that. I'm not gonna get into any anecdotes, but I've been there. I've thought I've gotten shot before. Like I was like, oh, that one for sure hit me. Um, and all those times it was just somebody being silly or somebody just do like they're drunk and they start shooting, or somebody's like somebody didn't give me their number, so I'm gonna start shooting up the parking lot, or like just ridiculous stuff. I don't think guns very often are being used to
No,
protect
they're
somebody.
being
Like,
they're being used like the way
no,
every other
they're
American
using,
uses anything they own, which is to flex. It's their Ford Flex. Yes,
yeah, or for a crime.
which is also what Americans
Yeah,
do.
yeah, or for a crime. Exactly. Or for crime, or or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. I just feel like, I mean, yeah, I just hate guns. So like, like this law is insane to me. I don't
Greg
know if
Abbott.
it was Greg
Yep.
Abbott, right? That's his name. Yeah, and he is the governor. Beto
Yeah, he's
O'Rourke
running
was
for
never running for
governor.
governor, was he? He wasn't. Okay, okay. I mean, hopefully somebody can get in there and change this law, or just because I hope it doesn't get so bad that they have to change it. Like people are getting just shot up all over the place, and they change it. But hopefully somebody can be like, no, this is not the way we want to go. I've been to Houston. It was a really nice city. I enjoyed it, and you would hate to like be there, and it's like you got to worry about all these people. Like if you make a mistake or you step on somebody's shoe, they might pull their gun out. Like or a 21-year old, like 21. I don't even want to know Dan at 21. 21-year old
Yeah, it's
Dan.
terrible. Um, Greg Abbott,
That's a
looking right
nightmare.
here, looks like he has an 11-point lead over Beto O'Rourke among likely voters in the University of Texas poll.
I'm not surprised. I'm
Yeah,
not
that's sad.
surprised.
I was hoping it would be a little bit less,
I mean, Texas.
a little bit more close.
I mean, Texas is a red state. I mean, Texas is like the seat of fascism in America.
Not
But
Florida.
Hopefully, nah, I'd say Texas. Um, like, hopefully, this can get reversed in some way because it's just not because usually it's like some state or some municipality tries some law and then the other ones be like, oh, I want to do that too. So you could easily end up having 4 or 5 states in the near future saying, yeah, we're going to do that too.
Yeah. Um. How about for the next story? We do. What are your predictions? That'd be a great segue. So, I talked with C's what my predictions are for the election. I think that Republicans are going to win the House. I think that Republicans are going to retain the Senate, or you might get a 50-50 split. Sorry, not retain the split. Sorry, not retain the Senate. I think they'll win the Senate. Also, I see Outer Risk says yeah, it's late on the East Coast, so good night. Thank you for watching. Take care.
Yeah, thank you for contributing. I mean, it would make sense. Like that's always what happens. I feel like I probably haven't paid enough attention to like who's running against who in these places.
Stats up on the board for you, so maybe some of these names will rejostle your memory.
I don't think that the Senate. Okay, the Senate right now is 52-48.
Yes, because remember it's Manchin and.
Yeah, but Manchin and what's her name?
No, sorry, it's not 52-48. It is I think it's like 50. Yeah, it's 52. It is 52-48. That's right.
Yeah, but then Manchin and Sinema always vote with them. I'll say this.
So like the toss-up seats right now are the Fetterman Oz race, the Warnock Walker race. In Nevada, we have the Laxalt Masto race.
Okay.
Yeah, there's Arizona? Mark Kelly, Arizona, Blake Masters, but that's looking more Democratic.
Right. Honestly, I kind of feel like the MAGA people are not really going to come out for the midterms that much.
I don't know.
I can see Dems holding the House, and I feel like it'll stay the same in the Senate.
Yeah, Bam, I like that optimism, but do you know how wild that is against all the numbers?
I agree because it never works that way. Like, I agree. Like, for sure, Republicans are going to win the House, and you're going to have people like, why didn't the Dems win the House? Like, yeah, it makes more sense for the Republicans to win the House. That's how it goes. But I'm going to go out on a limb, and just to be contrary to what you said, I'm going to say Dems keep the House, maybe win a few seats.
Yeah, Old Lady Play says, want a surprise? I think the Dems, and I think she agrees with you, are going to hold the Senate and the House. I think polling has systemically underestimated the turnout that will happen with women voters, and Dems are going to outperform in the polls. Now, here's an optimistic thing that I said last week. Georgia, right now, which was... No, seriously, yeah. C's was very surprised as well. So, right now, it's a slight lean Herschel Walker, but it's really 50-50. Herschel Walker has a 53% chance of winning. Warnock a 47% chance of winning. I'm calling that so easy for Warnock. And here's why. Early voting. The early voting numbers, which were crucial in Georgia to get Warnock elected in that special election, which are a lot due in part to the efforts led by Stacey Abrams and a lot of other people to get out the black vote for Democrats in Georgia. That helped a lot in 2022, and those were record numbers. Sorry, it does help a lot in 2020, and those are record numbers. In 2022, we're already beating those numbers. I think that, combined with Election Day, combined with Herschel Walker on his Yeah, second paid for abortion mistress who was hidden in the shadows. That just came out today. So yeah, we're this many illegitimate
Yeah.
children, this many aborted. Like we're like, listen, I think Warnock has lucked himself into a victory there again. So he'll be an incumbent. It'll be pretty hard to unseat him in that case. So good for him there. Yeah,
And I do agree. I do agree with old lady play. Like, there's going to be a lot of women that are showing out for this midterm election because a lot of people are going to see that abortion is on that we're voting on abortion in a lot of ways, especially with Lindsey Graham coming out saying they want a national abortion ban,
pretty
15
much.
weeks or something like that. I forgot what he said exactly, but yeah, people are. I mean, obviously the midterms are not like so lit like that, but I think a lot of people, and especially a lot of women, are feeling like they're going to be voting for their lives in a lot of
I
ways.
think some of Gen
So,
Zs as well, like Lisa Leitner on Twitter, on YouTube says, I agree Gen Z will show up. And yeah, I think if anything, just as it was said on Twitch by Old Lady Play, that the polls underestimate turnout, I think the polls underestimate turnout for Republicans. I think whether or not they underestimate turnout
mm,
for progressives is a little bit of a broader case by case basis. I think you could prove it in some cases. I think in other cases, like on a state by state level, it's less clear. But Ole Play also says, my evidence: 56% of Pennsylvania early voters are women, and the largest gender gap among first time voters. And yes, Gen Z says 40% are going to vote as well. I think that's good as yeah. Don't overestimate how many conservative voters you'll have in Gen Z as well. But I would like I'd like to be proven wrong. I'm open to be proven wrong.
you're not, but I'm joking. I'll say this much for my efforts. I went to a Halloween party last week and I dressed as a Trump supporter. I made myself a "Make America Great Again" hat and put MAGA on my sweater. And when there were a lot of young people there, and when they asked me about it, I talked to them about the importance of voting in the midterms. And I was asking them, you got your ballot, you got to vote, is important. So I'm hoping I got at least 3 Gen Zers to be voting in this election.
Yeah,
But they're in California.
I
But
think people I think people are going to be motivated
hopefully,
to vote in a lot of places. The thing that frustrates me, worries me, are the weekend warriors, the militia people who are showing up armed at voting places in their trucks, camping out, waiting for, to catch voter fraud, to catch Democrat ballot stuffing. Like, I don't know what they're trying to do, but it's definitely voter intimidation because you're there masked up with guns. They can't identify what they look like by the face or anything. So, at least they're finally masking up. And they, as long as you get into the militia mode, then sure, they'll wear all the KN95s you want. But that's a scary thing. Hopefully, you're already going to get your slew of, oh, it's only one day to vote. Oh, this is going to be really hard for the working class. Oh, there's going to be long lines because we shut down all the polling places. Like, welcome to America 101. But it's all going to be. I hope that just doesn't play too much of a big role on the actual election day, and the Democrats are able to hold a miracle, because if Democrats are able to hold things off, then listen, 2023 is going to be terrible. We're probably in a recession already. We'll officially be in the recession by 2023. It's going to be difficult for people. There will be more and more layoffs, more and more inequality, and more rampant, Gilded Age stuff that we've been talking about. But that recession will not last. Like, there will just be basic economic factors that start to swing back by the middle and the end of 2023. Biden might be able to take credit for that. By the way, oh great, someone's named Andrew Tate as a W started following. That should be fun. We love that. Please comment. We'll see how that's going. But I guess you followed me, so thanks? ?
well, he's
this,
Muslim now, so
I guess what I was saying with this case is that I hope that Democrats are able to come out in 2024 after this supposed recession and seem like they're fighting for people and fighting for working people and getting actual wins, because then they can say, look, the Democrats turned the economy around. Many of the stuff will be just because of factors outside of their control, but as long as people feel the economy better and prices go down and Democrats can say, hey, look, we had all the Houses and we had all the Senate, then I might start to become an optimist about 2024. Maybe. But if what's likely to happen and Republicans control the House, this is actually a really interesting like mini conversation I'm going to have, is that the past 2 years have been Republicans not in power, just trying to fight culture wars on cancel culture and trans issues. When they get in power, they will legislate on those things. They'll say they're protecting free speech, but what they'll be doing are things like, yeah, you go ahead. You're protected to run over protesters. It's a right to bear truck. Feel free. Absolutely go into that. Don't even think about LGBTQ plus characters. Don't show that new Scooby Doo in school. None of that lesbian Velma shit. Velma's going back in the closet where she belongs. And if you even think about showing Magic School Bus, because that was always queer coded, then we're gonna send your teachers to The Hague. Like, I'm kind of not kidding. Like, yeah, like I mean, maybe not The Hague because Gitmo's just right down the street, but like they would absolutely legislate fining and jailing trans people, LGBTQ plus people, and just all around finding ways to make their lives harder. And they would easily do that if they had power. Also, top level, they're going to do exactly what Liz Truss did in England, except it's not going to crash the economy. Tax cuts and more tax cuts for the rich.
Yeah, that's it. Like 100%.
Corporate giveaways.
That's first day legislation.
And here are the other things, like what the Supreme Court's tackling, Section 230, your ability to be free speech on the internet. Elon Musk is the shitty bar wings compared to what the Supreme Court is about to do to free speech on the internet. That's the main course. That's what we have to really watch out for. And Republicans are going to bolster that by, again, arguing for their version of free speech, which is Nazis. And they're going to ride more culture war stuff into 2024 unless they fumble the bag enough times to allow Democrats to get a victory again. Then America's really going to be in it. And by that point, y'all should plan to get out.
I think 2024, we just have to see if Trump's going to win.
I can't guarantee he hasn't announced it yet, but I don't think he's at the point where he wouldn't. I think he's now at 2022 with the election going on. I don't think it's a matter of will Trump announce. I think it's a matter of how soon after November 8th will he announce.
Yeah, and I guess I heard some stuff about like the money that he's gotten, like how he'll be able to spend that, but then he's also in a lot of legal trouble. But I mean, he's been campaigning ever since he's been campaigning for the last 6 years. But I think that Donald Trump himself has such a cult of personality amongst a lot of demographics that he's, you have to worry about him winning. I don't think Ron DeSantis is like there by any means. And I guess you also have to
I don't know. I think Ron DeSantis is holding out very strongly and is very clearly the second favorite right now. And it's also his to fumble. Sure. I think it's Trump's to fumble. Like Trump would have to lose on purpose at this point or just literally not run in order to not be the heir apparent, followed by Ron DeSantis. And then look, like all you need to do is just pick another celebrity. Like pick another celebrity ghoul who will play on these culture war issues, and like you'll get a Republican. The Democrats is the thing is like there's no bench at all. Like I don't think anyone on the Democratic side is really well liked. Even if you take like some of the progressives that have been around for a while, like Ro Khanna, Bernie Sanders, like they just don't have the trust, or Bernie Sanders is aged out of the game at this point. So yeah.
Yeah, that'll be tough. I don't know. I mean, I just wonder between DeSantis and Trump. Like, I feel like if Trump announced, Ron DeSantis wouldn't even run against him.
Oh, Ron DeSantis might try to vie for the VP spot.
Yeah, I could see that more than him actually trying to run against him. I don't think he has the cojones to do that.
Yeah, because he's played this game. I mean, I don't know. He's played this. I think I heard it articulated that DeSantis has played a good game of not criticizing Trump too heavily, because he definitely could use that as ammo. Like, he could just let Trump walk into all the stuff with the district attorney of New York and Manhattan and all those other different court cases that he has going on, and let Trump be hoisted by his own petard. Or DeSantis could decide, oh shit, my voters are also Trump voters, and if I appease them and I, can like, I'll make myself a better alternative and just outlast Trump, then I'll be golden, because they'll just naturally come to me. But he sees that, okay, if I antagonize the Trump voters by not bending the knee to their king, then I'll never have a chance.
Like, the Trump voters are not going to go to him like that, I don't think, because what Trump built a real cult of personality around him that's like never before seen. Ron DeSantis is just another Republican. So, like, yeah, some of them are going to vote for him, but they're not like a lot of those people, like especially like the QAnon types, like they're not excited about politics.
If Trump doesn't know, they will still get. They can be. I think they may not be as excited about politics. They're more excited about Trump, sure, but they also believe that Trump or somebody will be the catalyst for these things. They're not very. I'm trying to be as respectful as I can. They're swayable people, right? Not swayable for our ideology, but like if you said, hey, listen, Trump is not doing it this time, but he has anointed DeSantis to make contact with Q and make sure you see what he's doing in Florida to attack all the pedophiles. Well, guess what, Q folks? No, pedophile-free zone in all of America. Like, just like the drug-free zone signs at the schools, just going to post signs around the border. No pedophiles in America. Ron DeSantis has got that covered, Q folks. And, like, they'll eat that shit up.
That's another thing, too, though. I don't think Trump will ever anoint Ron DeSantis.
That's what I'm saying. That won't happen, but, like, these narratives get lost from you if Trump is not running. If Trump decides to not run, then...
Yeah.
That narrative can just float out there for the Q people, and they'll blot onto it because, again, let me walk around my language here. These are very swayable people.
Yeah, I think, and I agree with you, like, for sure. I think that a lot of those types will be more motivated, like, online than to be like, I got to go out there and really, like, fill it out, like, there's going to be a lot of chatter more than there is like real enthusiasm, because CIA Ron, to me, he's just another guy in a suit, like, and him, like, his culture war stuff, like, that's just the flavor of the week for him. Like, I don't even think he believes that stuff. That's just what's popular now. He's a politician, and I wouldn't be surprised if if he's on the ticket. Like, if he's the Republican nominee, I wouldn't be surprised if some of that rhetoric does, like, kind of tamps down a bit. I wouldn't be surprised.
Let's end. I think I'm going to end the stream a little bit early, just because there's a little bit light on news, and we're going to start prepping for next week, which will be the week before the election. I think we're going to do a special live stream version of the Dan from the Internet Voter Guide. So that is basically just like... What I did was, regardless of where you are in the country, and if it's not Los Angeles, which is where I locally vote in, send in a proposition, send in a question, and we will investigate it live and figure out what makes sense for people to vote on. So we can get people to kind of build that muscle of investigating these local political issues for yourself. I like doing this. I've done this on Instagram before, on Snapchat and other times. So I think this will be, I may have done it on Twitch actually last time in 2020 as well, but this will be good for then. But I want to start by playing, we'll do a little bit on China right now. Let me start the recording again. China. Okay, so I'm going to play a little bit of a clip from Democracy Now! Because they were talking to a couple of folks. One was, well, they're just talking to a number of folks who are like researchers on China who are really good details of people to speak with on this. And I thought there were certain things they were saying that are really enlightening and illuminating, because I think one thing we try to do, even though these are difficult conversations and it's definitely challenging as a production sense to do, but it's to actually build a cohesive language for the left to interface with world affairs. Because right now, it's just Tanky says a wild thing on the internet and gets a bunch of likes, and everyone goes, okay, this is the opinion now. When it's like, that's so removed from reality, it makes no, like, you're just laughed out of the room. It makes no sense. That being said, international politics is a very neoliberal conservative place where, like, the world order of global neoliberalism, and by that I mean like offshoring jobs off to other places and having diplomacy through economic interconnectedness, is hard to break through. And so it's important to have an analysis that's very good at doing that. And Democracy Now! Is just very reputable in doing that because they have really good experts on like this. So we'll play a little bit of this coverage here. And one of the things that we'll point out to, I definitely think was my favorite thing, is that there's an importance on not confusing what's happening in China right now with, oh, this is the new Cold War. Oh, this is a Cold War. Because, I mean, I've fallen for that thing just because, in addition to hosting a show, I'm also thinking about, okay, how do I truncate this and describe this for people in a way that is, you know, hooky and catching and interesting and gets me as close factually possible as I can to the facts of the stories that I can fill in the details. But, so I think it's good to figure out why and how, you know, how these terms actually work. So let's go.
So long. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We begin today's show looking at China, where Xi Jinping has begun a historic third term as head of the Chinese Communist Party. The decision came over the weekend during the party's Congress, which is held every 5 years. There was also a major shakeup of the 7-member Politburo Standing Committee, which is China's most powerful governing body. China's premier, Li Keqiang, longtime rival to Xi, was demoted while 4 Xi loyalists were promoted. The party's top official in Shanghai, Li Qiang, appears set to become China's new premier. He's a close ally of Xi. He oversaw the harsh COVID crackdown in Shanghai that lasted months. Perhaps the most dramatic moment of the Chinese Communist Party's Congress came when former President Hu Jintao was abruptly escorted out of the closing ceremony. He'd been sitting right next to Xi Jinping when 2 men came to escort him from his seat. Some analysts speculated the move was an assertion of Xi's dominance. Chinese state media later said it was because the former leader was not feeling well. We turn now to look more closely at the future of China as Xi Jinping begins a third term. Under Xi, China's continued decades-long effort to eradicate extreme poverty. Some 800 million people have been lifted out of poverty over the past 4 decades in what UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called, quote, the greatest anti-poverty achievement in history. But Xi has also overseen a growing surveillance state to silence dissent and target ethnic minorities, including the Uyghurs. And Xi's third term comes at a time of growing tension between the U.S. and China over Taiwan and other issues. We go now to 2 guests. Yacha Wang, a senior China researcher at Human Rights Watch. She's in New York. And in Baltimore, Maryland, we're joined by Ho-Fung Hung, professor of political economy and sociology at Johns Hopkins University. His books include Clash of Empires, From Chimerica to the New Cold War, and The China Boom, Why China Will Not Rule the World. We welcome you both both to Democracy Now! Thanks so much for joining us. Professor Ho-Fung Hung, let's begin with you. Talk about the significance of what happened this weekend. Talk about who Xi Jinping is and how his policies have changed over the years.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you. And what happened over the weekend is very significant in the sense that though we actually expect it to come for a while, because in 2018, Xi Jinping managed to abolish the 5-year term limit of the Chinese presidents. That is kind of a term limit that Deng Xiaoping led to impose in the Chinese constitution in the 1980s, because after the Cultural Revolution, Deng and the Communist Party leader think that it is not good to have lifelong leader. It is good to have check and balance within the party. And Xi Jinping managed to take away this term limit so that not like his predecessors, Hu Jintao and Jiang Zemin, who each served 5 terms time as president of China, Xi can now theoretically serve unlimited term, that until he died, and he can be a lifelong leader of China. So this kind of abolition of the term limit as a legacy of the Deng Xiaoping era is significant. So it was done in 2018, but people didn't believe that other party elite will let him actually do it to have the third 5-year term, but he managed to do it. It's just proven over the weekend that he managed to do it. Not only that, but also he managed to put all of his own loyalists, absolute loyalists, in the Politburo Standing Committee. So the people from other factions, for example, some people who tipped to be in the Politburo Standing Committee or the Politburo who belong to the Hu Jintao, the previous president faction, were not there. So it seems that in the next 5 years, at least, Xi Jinping is established his own absolute personal control of everything in China without much check and balance within the party.
And talk about what happened this weekend. Do you think that was deliberately staged to remove the former leader sitting next to Xi Jinping as a message that he was consolidating his power? Or in fact, do you think it is what China said, what the government said, that he wasn't feeling well?
Definitely that in this kind of carefully choreographed rituals of the Communist Party, it is unimaginable. There's this kind of accident or incident that is totally out of nowhere. And of course, there is a possibility that he actually feel unwell. But now more video footage emerged from the Spanish and the Singaporean TV showing what happened before he was former President Hu Jintao was escorted away from the Congress. It didn't seem like he is unwell at all. That it appeared in those video footage that he tried to open a folder with some documents, and Li Jianxu, who is sitting next to him, tried to prevent him from looking at the document and seized the folder. And then Xi Jinping called somebody to come and take him away. And initially, he appeared to be reluctant to leave, and then the guards and the person behind Hu Jintao seems to be using some kind of force to take him away, and then he eventually left the Congress reluctantly. And then after he decided to leave, and he walked quite fast, and then he can walk on his own, and it didn't seem to me that he's actually really feeling unwell, and I don't think it is the real reason that he left. And then why Xi Jinping called somebody to escort him or even really forcefully take him away from the Congress, that I think Xi Jinping move is carefully considered and calculated to show that he can do whatever he wants, and he can even take out a former president from the Congress in front of the camera. And of course that people are speculating that I think it is reasonable to suppose so that Hu Jintao might not be very happy about the so-called election result of the Politburo and the Politburo Standing Committee without any of his loyalists there. And Xi Jinping might worry that he might give a face or not raising hands or not clapping hands in the final section. So it is a possibility that Xi Jinping deliberately asked somebody to take him out to prevent this embarrassment.
That was a really long point he was making. I'm one to talk. So what was... I think that the really big thing to take away there is that this is a very peaceful, calm, oh, nice, look at the, hammer and sickle there. It's very orderly and peaceful. Power grab. It's a grab for power, and it's an assertion of dominance of Xi Jinping saying, I'm nobody to fuck with. I am nothing like anyone who has come before me. And I am going to set the agenda in a way that makes it clear that I won't be challenged. And those who attempt to challenge me or attempt to act out of turn or even step a little bit out of line, I'll be punished and removed, and you won't have your power anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that that clip before I watched the Democracy Now thing. I forgot what day that came out, but yeah, I don't know. Like, it's kind of scary when you see things like that. Like, I mean, I would imagine Hu Jintao is fine. I don't know, like, what's going on there, but I mean, I feel like I brought this guy up like 4 times already, but it just reminds me of when Saddam took power in, I want to say the 70s in Iraq. And it was a similar situation. Like, it was a bunch of people in let's say the parliament or whatever. And they had the police come and start like rounding certain people up. And those people were executed. And that was how Saddam ended up consolidating his own power. So yeah, I mean, I remember 2018 when they abolished the term limit for China, and I mean for like when they abolished the term limit for the president, and I was like, damn, dude,
yeah,
that's just not a good sign. Like, it makes me trust you a lot less, man. Like, maybe what they're saying about you is right.
Yeah, the thing that we always need to emphasize to leftists, unfortunately, in America, is that the imperial enemy of our imperial enemy is not our friend, right? In any stretch of the imagination. Like,
yes. Amen.
Xi Jinping, this is not communism. This is cosplay.
No,
this is irony at its finest, right?
It might be cultural appropriation.
Russians might be a little bit upset on that, actually, but like, this is an authoritarian power grab. This is honestly a preview of what the Republican Party is going to look like in very due time if we really see like them get control of all branches of government. But the consequences of this, like, and I just like to kind of get to the point of what is ultimately going to be said, is that the Cold War was when, China and the U.S. had, or not China and the U.S., but Russia and the U.S. had these different proxy wars happening, and there was this conflict happening between rebel forces in this country and the governments in that country, but really each one was a stand-in between capitalism versus communism in like any different state, and both were backed by U.S. regime or Russian regime, and either one was trying to topple another country. It was all like spheres of influence stuff. That literally can't happen now because, like Russian and the U.S., that's a different relationship than China and the U.S. There's a lot of economic connections that are being made. And so if anything, this isn't a new Cold War, it's more like a new trade war. It's like trade war part 2, part 3, whatever you want to call it. Because with the thing we talked about last week where Joe Biden made it illegal for people with American citizenship to work and provide services to certain Chinese semiconductor firms, these are going to be, going to start seeing this tit for tat that may or may not escalate into another theater of war or conflict, because that's just how America and China be. But it's definitely going to be a flashpoint to watch in the coming days, weeks, months, because Xi Jinping feels emboldened. He's got the moves right now, so he's not going to, by any stretch of the imagination, start to get more negotiable, get more agreeable.
That Cold War you're speaking of, during that Cold War, communist China did side with the Great Satan, United States of America, against communist Soviet Union. For people that want to know,
and they did that because they really wanted, economic reasons, because they wanted to engage in capitalist practice, where it's like, oh no, this is still state owned because these businesses are 50% owned by the state, but they're running as businesses and they're seeking the profit motive, and thus they are taking, like they are making more than their employees are worth because that's how their money is. And they're doing all the things that communists complain about capitalism and making it systemic and making it even more efficient. But you also have to look at that and go, the Chinese Communist Party moved away from a lot of their morals and principles, let themselves get bamboozled a little bit by the United States, but then turn around and was like, okay, we'll give you your cheap goods that you'll get hooked on. By the way, we will lift almost 1 billion people out of poverty in about 40 years, over the course of 40 years, rapidly modernize our cities and leapfrog American cities as far as their technological prowess. And we'll start running shit and have our own sphere of influence over here, as China has had for millennia. Just modernized. So it's why you have to look at these things with a lot of nuance. And I think if I can give tankies any sort of credit, that there's a lot of like anti-China sentiment, and they're the first ones to say like, no, like this is they've done more to lift people out of poverty than the United States has tried to. And they mention all these things, but it lacks an actual analysis. And they're like, yeah, sure. And you know why they did that, tankies? Because of capitalism. And that's not an endorsement of capitalism by no means. But that is to say, when you're looking towards these people and you're idolizing them because of some communist purity test or whatever, know that Twitter, once again, is the great place where you're just showing your ass. You're showing the people how little you actually know about these things. And it's so not obvious to you, so people keep posting, but it's very obvious to everyone else.
Seriously. And going back to what you said about like the theater of war potentially, like I really hope that doesn't happen, obviously. But that theater of war would be Taiwan.
Chinese Taipei.
Another democratic country. Gotta be careful. No, I'm joking. But no, like another place where they have a thriving democracy. The culture there is in a lot of ways a lot different than China. But recently, Xi Jinping was talking about not ruling out force against Taiwan, and speaking about Taiwan as if Taiwan is some big threat to them, which is ridiculous. I don't think that the democratic culture of Taiwan is going to somehow seep into China. Like, I don't think that's the case. But I mean, people are saying that China has its eyes on Taiwan. I hope that doesn't happen. But I'm still thinking about when none of us thought that Russia was actually going to invade Ukraine, and Biden and everybody else was like, no, it's going to happen. And we're just like, you guys are wrong like always. And that shit happened, So I'm just hoping. I think I told somebody like a week before it happened, like, oh no, that's not gonna happen. Like they're just warmongering like usual. And I'm like looking at Uncle Joe, like, damn, dude. Don't do that.
Be wrong like usual. It's more predictable.
But it kind of going back to like us, a lot of us, I think, on the left thinking of Vladimir Putin as a rational, pragmatic person. But we'll see what happens. Obviously, I do hope that the economic ties between China and the United States keep it so this just stays as bluster and doesn't become anything too dangerous because we don't want to see Taiwan go through that because that's where it's going to happen.
You can see Taiwan flash into that. You could see Hong Kong flash into that. You could see North Korea flash into that. Probably not so North Korea, but like China and North Korea definitely have an allyship and a partnership. And again, it's less of a political thing. And I see that as being like less of a theater war than Taiwan, like you're saying. And Hong Kong less so as well because it's just so urbanized.
Yeah.
But I that may look less like a war and more like the lockdowns of Shanghai, where people are just not allowed onto the streets, where you have martial law declared in these like urban areas. It could get very weird, but also that stuff would cause economic turmoil in China. China is not immune to these world crises that we're having economically right now, and so they are not trying to slow down their own economic activity, and a war would do that. Now, and again, here's not to relick old wounds here, but there is no let's just outspend China until their military can't beat us anymore. Like, that's a strategy that works really well with Russia. That is not going to work well with China. Or like, it may or may not work well with Russia, right? But that isn't working with China. It won't work with China. So like, when we get in that situation, we have to tell a bunch of leftists, no, this is not like Ukraine. Or if we get in that situation, mind you. No, this is not like Ukraine. We can't just, okay, this time we'll be able to get another coalition of European countries who are even more reliant on this country to come fight with us. And then, we'll just drain them out of resources in 2070 never.
Yeah, and Taiwan is a really small country. It's a small island. It's very close to China. I think if China wanted to be aggressive towards Taiwan, it's not going to be like how it is with Ukraine. Like, I would imagine it would, like, Taiwan's got to just basically give up. Like, they got to, okay, like, you got us now. And although the Biden administration, and I don't know if him specifically, but has come out and said, I think it was Joe Biden, he said that they would protect Taiwan. Who knows? Who knows if it actually happens? Like, who knows what you're going to actually do? But I don't really even want to think about that. That'll be really unfortunate. I am someone who believes in democracy, and I feel like another non-democratic nation trying to take over a democracy and do all that is just like, it's just really bad for democracy in itself. Like, you're just having dominoes of democratic nations fall,
But I think the world does benefit, and the status quo benefit, and people from power benefit from things going as they are, even though what we're living in is very unsustainable. It's like, we in the working class who are in the thick of it can very much tell these folks are like more interested in the status quo so they can continue making their money, right? So I think more in conflict and protruded conflict is a little bit less likely. Putin or Xi Jinping is not an actor that's similar to Putin. I'd say on the rational scale, a little bit more rational, but that is still to say, like, this could get ugly and misinterpreted, so we'll be careful.
Yeah. I'm going to read what an old lady play said in the chat. There's also the odd fact that very, very few people immigrate to China despite its modernization and nominal communist equality. I've always wanted to know, does China have universal health care?
I think they do.
Because I kind of don't think so.
Because whenever they mention we're the only country in the world where like they don't have universal health care, sometimes Singapore is mentioned because they have private health care as well. But I am not entirely sure about that. I think China has like near universal coverage, but it's very basic, and if you're in rural areas, it's a lot different than if you're in like one of the developed areas. Of course. So it's like not equal.
Yeah, I wonder. I've tried to do a little research on it. It's hard to find out. I remember on some video I watched, it might have been like the Real News. They were talking about China, and whoever it was being a bit more praiseworthy of China. And I remember asking in the comments, do they have universal health care? And I got like a kind of fugazi answer from the person that was talking actually responded. Yeah, and it's not easy to get a whole lot of information about what's going on in China. Like, it's not easy from here. So, like, I need to know, can you just walk in there and get your care and leave?
Yeah. Jesus Raphael on YouTube says, "Oh, I just got my booster today. Congratulations. I hope you feel good from that. I felt a little bit tired afterwards. Bam is working on it." But Jamie's still looking it up. We haven't heard back from him in a while. It's a lot of Googling. But yeah, that's really good. Good on you for getting your booster, but yeah. Old Lady Play says, Wikipedia says they do, but just as Dan says, accessibility is not total. And yeah, China, it's geographically very difficult, and it's a population-wise very difficult to provide healthcare to that number of people. Yeah, accessibility is still not total. I think still they're probably doing a better job than the United States, considering we have fewer people and less land to cover.
Yeah.
Totally. I'm not even making much of a value judgment either because I don't know that much. But it's just like not that hard to be worse than America or to be better than America on this thing. Anyways, that's all I have. I am so tired. Been doing a lot of video editing. Been getting the archive of Power Report all up to date, so all the podcasts are available, all the YouTube clips of live of all the stuff we've been doing for the past month or so. So thanks for all the patience on all of those things. Appreciate everyone for joining on the stream and watching. Bam, appreciate you for coming on all these Power Report episodes, all of them We Made It podcast episodes. That's gonna be such a wonderful place for my brain to be when it's just World Cup talk. That's gonna be yes. Bam can be found on He Can't. I can be found on TikTok at Dan from the Internet and Instagram at Dan from the Internet, Twitter at Dan from the Web, Twitch Dan from the Web, as you can find, and Raid. Looks like we're gonna be raiding. Looks like y'all are gonna be watching Abelina Sabrina's channel, whatever she's doing over there. So we'll have fun with that. Bam, catch you later. Cheers.
See you guys.
And
bye.
Raid begins.